In this episode of another Zelda podcast, David meets with Andy and Allie of the Zelda Cast to talk shop. Hello and welcome to another Zelda podcast. I'm David, and today I am hosting the show, but I have two very special guests who are also hosts, but of a different show. I have Alasyn and Andy here from the Zelda Cast.
Woo! Happy to be here. This is awesome. What a great day this has been.
Yeah.
It's been an insane day for me. Very cool.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah, this has been very fun.
Alasyn, what's going on today?
Well, not much for me actually. We did our podcast, which was insanely awesome, and then I kind of have the rest of the day free, which is super nice.
She got the easy schedule.
Yeah.
For some context, we are right in the middle of a massive Zelda Dungeon marathon going on right
that
now.
is
I
correct.
think it's day 2 of like a whole week.
Yes.
I've learned. I thought it was literally just going to be.
The days are lost to me already.
Yeah,
You've been going for 2 days already.
Yeah.
Our sleep schedule gets pretty jacked up because it's 24/7 stream. So
it's 24/7, no breaks. Somebody's always playing something. Yeah. We're running through every Zelda game, and there's a bunch of different gimmicks. I think we're playing A Link to the Past with like a DDR pad at some point this week.
Oh my gosh! I can't wait.
It's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Wait, A Link to the Past, not Link's Awakening. A Link to the Past.
I think that's right.
I think so too.
Yeah. You could probably pull that off.
So I'd be a sweaty mess, but yeah, it's been a crazy week. I was up I played Cadence of Hyrule from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Chicago time.
Last night,
and then I took a little cat nap, and then we were up and at it at 9 o'clock.
Yep.
Well, I was, Andy, you and I, we've been chatting on Twitter a little bit over the past couple months, and I think both of us agreed that any time that we were in the same state together, we being the two shows, we'd try to do some kind of crossover. And then I think a few months went by, and then if I recall, just a month or two ago, I got a tweet from you or DM from you saying like, I think I got it. There's this marathon thing, and I think we can line up. Yeah. And I was very excited about that. It was really cool. And so here we are. We just finished. I was very flattered and excited. The two of you just invited me onto your show, and it was a live stream as part of the marathon.
Yep.
Yes.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for that invite.
Thanks for joining us.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I loved it.
It was really a blast.
It
was my first time ever doing any kind of like other Zelda podcast thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we've, Zelda Dungeon's like so big, but Kate and I, we've kind of just been rootsing it from a kitchen, you know what I mean, for the past 5 years. Yeah. It was really fun to kind of be a part of this. And then, of course, obviously, I knew that I would bring my equipment too, so that we'd have an opportunity for the three of us to chat as another Zelda podcast episode.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to keep the crossover event of the century going.
Yes.
I saw that on the tweet. I was like, whoa!
The Avengers ain't got nothing on us.
So before we get into it, I have some listener feedback, but today what we're going to do, we always start with listener feedback. I want to talk a little bit about how the Zelda Cast came to be. Maybe we can chat a little bit about podcasting in general, because I've never had a co-podcaster really like on the show in that way. And then maybe after the break, we kind of dig into a little bit more Zelda things. We talk about some of the first moments in our lives that kind of gave us when we really learned that, oh my gosh, I think I'm a Zelda fan and whatnot, all that kind of stuff. We'll just reminisce. Sound
I love
good?
it. I love it.
I love that because it's nerding out about podcasting and Zelda.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
okay, I'm going to do a little listener feedback, and then we'll jump in here. I only have 4 today.
All right.
And let's see. The first one here is over on our episode Hyrule Castles, which was episode 12 of season 4 on YouTube. Blue Valor said, I love Hyrule Castles, starface emoji. My favorite is Breath of the Wilds. It's gorgeous, but I only wish we could explore it in its full glory before the calamity. Sad winky face.
Yes.
Twilight Princess is second. I love the way it looms over the castle town and the beautiful views of it from the bridges leading into town. Yeah, fair enough. Plus, it's an awesome final dungeon with the best final boss in the series, Cool Guy Glasses, in my opinion.
You know what? we were kind of beating up a little bit on Twilight Princess on our show, but I'm gonna throw it a bone and say that I think that the final boss sequence of Twilight Princess is up there. Maybe not the top, but it's like a top 3 in that final sequence. There's 4 really awesome fights in a row.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good stuff.
Yeah, and it's also one of those weird things, I've said it on the show before, but it's one of those weird things where the intensity increases.
Yes.
But like the scale decreases. You start with big old pig Ganon or whatever, and finally in the end it is just a sword fight. But like it just because it focuses in, you go from a big beast to a horse ride to the Zelda thing to the sword fight.
Yeah.
That music goes hard too.
It really comes in.
That fight with Ganondorf at the end is the last bit, and that music is probably some of my favorite bits of music from the Zelda series. It's so good, especially when some people cover it. There's this like Celtic mashup cover of Zelda music, and they do that bit. Oh my god, it is so good.
So you put that if you're on the treadmill, you're running before you know it. Like,
yes.
I have a Zelda workout list. I might have to try to find this song and get it in there. Wow, that's nuts. How do you all feel about Breath of the Wild's castle?
I think it's awesome.
Oh yeah, great castle.
Yes.
We were talking. I think that the dungeons in Breath of the Wild 2 are going to look a lot like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, these kind of like mega experiences.
I think so.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And I like that comment about wishing that we could have explored it before the Calamity, because you see that a bit in Age of Calamity, but you don't really get to go into the castle and do much with it.
I agree.
You get to be around it. But yeah, it would be really cool to see a lot of what's going on inside, because like the decor and the scenery of it that I've seen in cutscenes is like beautiful and immaculate.
There are people out there that have done deep dives and they've kind of mapped out the geography, and some have, I don't remember what YouTube video I was watching 2 years ago, but someone figured out that there was an observatory and then where where all the actual geography would be before the collapse. So cool.
That's awesome.
That's so wild. I love that.
If we do go back in time in the sequel to Breath of the Wild, and we do get to go back into that, I mean, we know the castle's there. We saw it lift up in the trailer at least, so something might be going on.
Yep.
That would be super cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, thank you very much, Blue Valor, for that comment. Next up, we have David Nystrom. Another.
Hey, our buddy.
Hey,
Yeah, I was wondering. I threw him in here.
Hey, what's
nice.
up, Dave?
So David says here also about the Hyrule Castles episode. That I did not realize. On YouTube, he said, he's a little bit longer, so this will be tons of fun. This was a really fun episode. It was on an episode where Kate and I were talking about all the Hyrule Castles. Fine. This was a really fun episode. I find that the Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess versions of Hyrule Castle are by far the best. A fun fact, there's a castle in Zelda 2. Oh, because we didn't include this in our list. In Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, however, it's called the North Castle. It's also the version of the castle that appears in the animated series, Captain N and the Valiant Commons.
Wow.
I feel like David knows his stuff here. It likely bears this name because of its proximity in relation to Hyrule's iteration from the original game, North Castle. Oh, I get it. Yeah, because the original game's down there in the bottom, which is located at the very bottom of the map in Zelda 2. Notes on another castle: the appearance of Hyrule Castle in The Wind Waker is not the same as the version in Ocarina of Time. I think I said something like, "Yeah, you go back to that Ocarina of Time castle in Wind Waker." I actually thought that was the case. Let's see what he says here. The Wind Waker follows the adult timeline in which Ganondorf came to power and built Ganon's tower on the ruins of Hyrule Castle. When his tower falls, the area around it was filled with water, and the new version of the castle was rebuilt there. Keep up the awesome show. Okay, bye.
There you go.
David, laying it down.
Don't challenge David, because he'll tell you. I want to say, I think that David got some of that Captain N animated series knowledge from our virtual theater. I have a third podcast that we do like an episode by episode breakdown of the Zelda animated series.
I had no idea.
It's something, and we're doing Captain N right now as well. So I think he learned. He's a patron, right? You might have picked up a few things from us, hey David?
Perhaps. We've also explored the shows on our show, but we do like 3 episodes at a time, and I think it'll become a 3-part series because there's roughly 9 episodes, or maybe there's 12. I don't really know. Okay, next here, Justin Pollitt, who is a patron for Another Zelda podcast. He said here, I think this is on Instagram actually, I was listening to the podcast and there was mention of an order to play the games. The way I suggest to play it is to start with Ocarina, because I feel it best represents the franchise as a whole, then play the adult timeline, where the player warn the player about the Triforce quest, then the child timeline. I would say try Majora, because it's my favorite, but if they don't like the timer, then just skip it. Then play the pre-Ocarina games, then the Fallen timeline. I say Fallen last because most of this is getting a little, there's not a ton of punctuation, I'm just trying to get through. I say Fallen last because most of the difficult titles are in that timeline, so hopefully doing it last builds enough love for the franchise to power through the difficulties. Then Breath of the Wild last. Thoughts?
I actually agree with Breath of the Wild last.
I agree with that as well, because if you play Breath of the Wild first,
It's
feel
tough
like
to go back.
Yeah, it's tough to go back.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because especially if you're like a modern, gamer right now, you play
or a new gamer.
Well, even like we were talking about Skyward Sword HD, like you have to hold down the button to use the dual analog camera, and it's not quite the same. And I think that if you play Breath of the Wild first, then it is tough to go back. I agree with Ocarina. I myself, I don't know if I would put a ton of emphasis on playing it in terms of like the story and in terms of timeline and stuff like that, but I think Ocarina is definitely a good base. A Link to the Past is a good base, and then once you kind of get those, you can work towards your Majora's Mask, which are a little bit more in depth, or like certainly your original NES Zeldas, which I mean maybe you could just skip those. I don't know.
It's interesting with those originals because I think for some older games are not necessarily, just because they might be more simple does not mean they're easier. Quite frankly, oftentimes it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Usually they're really difficult to play, and I think you really have to be dedicated to try to seriously play something like Zelda or Zelda 2 in this day and age.
Yeah, and don't even try it if you're not going to do it on the Switch. I mean, for me, like there's so many things on the Switch that like it makes it a lot more. I mean, there's literally like the Life of Luxury mode that makes it so much more accessible and fun.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I did. Oh, sorry. Yes, Alasyn?
I was just going to say that it's really hard to try and picture playing Zelda in any kind of order. Like, it's easy to say that about something like Marvel or Star Wars because it follows a concise story, whereas Zelda does not.
Yeah.
So, but I do like the idea of a beginner game to introduce somebody to the series, which I always say is Ocarina of Time. Mm-hmm. And then I agree that Breath of the Wild should probably be last because it's so different, so innovative, and you just have so much freedom that I find it hard to kind of go back if you're really new to the series.
I agree.
I felt that even when I did my Skyward Sword HD play, I was kind of like, it's like, oh, I can't actually go over these mountains right here. Oh, there are invisible walls everywhere. Oh, I really am kind of in a hallway.
Yeah.
And whereas the first time I played Skyward Sword, I don't think I even cared about that stuff. But now with Breath of the Wild, you know what I mean?
Even playing like Link's Awakening, the remake was kind of a shock to the system after playing like Breath of the Wild because they were so different.
Yes.
Yeah. That I thoroughly enjoy the Link's Awakening is my like second favorite game, whatever. And I felt that the remake did a great job of kind of like keeping it, bringing it into a little bit of a modern context with the extra buttons and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
When Kate and I did our Link's Awakening review episode way back in season 1, it was her first 2D game ever of Zelda games,
right?
And the fact that you had to like pause swap your items was almost a deal breaker for her in a modern context, I guess you could say.
Yes.
Yeah. I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought they did a great job remapping some of those buttons and stuff. But what the heck? Okay, I didn't plan this, but but Blue Valor's back.
All right.
With a comment on another episode. And this will be our last comment for the podcast here. This is in regards to our episode in season 4, episode 5, the How Majora's Mask Deals with Grief episode, where it was myself and one of our blog writers, Stephanie Klimov. She was in town for us going to the video game summit. It was like a convention we were at.
Right.
And so, of course, we took advantage of this situation and also recorded an episode. And she came up with the idea. So Blue Valor here says, this is my favorite one of these, favorite with a U, so we've got someone from across the pond here messaging in. This is my favorite one of these podcasts so far, through all 4 seasons, smiley face. I love Majora's Mask, and although I got major anxiety with the 3-day time system, when I got over it, it turned out to be one of my favorite Zeldas of all time. Exploring Clocktown and seeing into the lives of the people were amazing, and the emotion I felt on moments like the last few hours of day 3, when interacting with the NPCs and reading the thought-provoking dialogue of the masked children in the moon, made this game very special for me. For the record, my favorite dungeon is Snowhead Temple, and my favorite song is the Song of Healing, which is in my top 3 of all time. Thank you very much, Blue Valor. Thoughts on Majora's Mask?
Yes, I actually have thoughts on Song of Healing.
Ooh.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I remember we were doing like a ranking of songs, and I wanted to rank it really high. And I think it's not just because of the sound, but because of the grief. So you use that song, like it's not just, just a little boppy song. You use that song to literally heal people that are in pain. And it's not just those people that you get the masks for. It's the people that they interacted and have any kind of like familial or friendship or anything that has to do with them. So you're not just healing that person, you're healing all of them. You're healing pretty much everybody in that game. And that all comes from that song. And I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. So
I love how you're wording this.
So like, yeah, it's like, that's a big deal song to me. So like, I always rank that one really high.
The atmosphere of Majora's Mask is actually literally unlike anything else in the series. It's just so unique and powerful. It's a top 5 Zelda game for me. Like, I think, like when you start off with the base that Ocarina of Time laid down, and it would have been really easy for that game to be a straight up sequel, and I guess in some ways it is, but the way that they twist and turn it on its head is so, it's very impressive, and it constantly is not what you think it's going to be in that game. So yeah, it's a nothing. I agree with everything everyone said about that game.
I think for me, I feel like everyone should play Ocarina before playing Majora because they are pretty much a direct
Definitely,
sequel.
yes.
But at the end of the day, I actually prefer playing Majora's over Ocarina. I might dive into Ocarina a little bit more because it's easy to just kind of get in there and play.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
But boy, it's an emotional experience to play Majora's Mask.
Yes.
And I think sometimes, for example, my main co-host, Kate, she has not played Majora's Mask yet, and she's like nervous to play it because she thinks she's going to get overwhelmed by all the side quests and all of that. But my advice is to just kind of don't let the timer freak you out. You just know you're going to do 900 laps through those 3 days, and just kind of start learning about the people's storylines, and you really can get something out of it.
Yes,
You know?
I agree.
Particularly in 3D, I think you can manage your time in a much better way so that it's less stressful. But yeah, I think that definitely you should play Ocarina of Time first.
I think that time limit just adds to the immersion of that story, of everybody's stories, because it's multiple stories kind of combined into one. You know, if you didn't have that time limit, I think it would still be good, but it wouldn't be as you wouldn't be as invested, you know?
I agree completely. I think, and everybody knows that originally they were going to try to go for 7 days. It was supposed to be a week, and they had to kind of dial it down. But I think the trade-off, even if the time limit, and I say that in quotes because it's almost not a time limit, it's like it's Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not like you can only play the game for those 3 days. And then you're done or something. But the trade-off is that every NPC, because we have these 3 days, and the designers were able to, I guess, orchestrate or direct every single NPC with a life and a reason and a meaning. Now we no longer do we have just like the NPCs just kind of standing in the middle of the town with not really much to say.
Right.
Now you talk to someone and it matters.
Yeah, they have agency. I feel like there's more payoff. Like a lot of the side quests in Breath of the Wild some of them are rewarding, but I feel like everything in Majora's Mask matters.
Yeah.
So,
Well said. Cool. Well, thank you everybody for that listener feedback. We always appreciate it. People can find us on Another Zelda Pod on Twitter, Another Zelda Podcast on Instagram. And we have found that the best way to help us out is if you're able to put a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps the algorithm in a major way. And so we always really appreciate kind words over there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel very gifted by the AZP community. We have a really supportive audience, and I'm really, really, really proud of that.
Awesome.
Andy, I know, so the Zelda cast, I want to kind of talk about how this show came to be. We haven't yet said in this episode that, of course, it was the Champions cast when it first started.
Yes.
And I think, Alasyn, you joined in a little bit later after the first inception.
I did, yes.
So, Andy, I'm going to ask you to kind of set up, how did this podcast come to be?
All right. So we had so I'm going to go way back. I joined Zelda Dungeon late in December 2016, and we had a podcast at the time, and it was called the Zelda Informer Podcast.
2015?
Oh, no, 2016.
16?
Right before Breath of the Wild.
I feel like I came across that show when I was researching, but anyway.
You might have, yeah. It was hosted by a guy named Alfred, and we were doing the podcast, but he, I think he got married, actually, I want to say, and then the show kind of stopped. And so Breath of the Wild came out, and we enjoyed it. Everybody had a lot of creative energy. It was an awesome time after Breath of the Wild came out, and so I was tinkering around with the idea of bringing the podcast back at the host, and in that time I was I'd become the editor-in-chief of the site. So I was thinking about can we bring it back? Do I have the right people for it? Do I have the right equipment for it? And the answer was no. My mic sounded horrible. But,
okay.
So I had a podcast with my buddies called The Cool Story Show back in
Cool Story Show?
Yeah, it might be out there somewhere. Please don't listen to it. But we'd had a podcast in 2014 or something like that. And so I was like, I think I could bring this back. I enjoyed podcasting and I enjoyed Zelda, so why not? So we started the show and we came up with the name The Champions Cast because the latest batch of DLC for Breath of the Wild, the Champion's Ballad, had just come out, and so we were kind of playing on that name. And so eventually, actually not even that long ago, maybe like 2 months ago, we just were like, okay, we're just gonna call ourselves the Zelda Cast from now on, because just as our show is just about Zelda, and I felt Champions Cast was maybe a little bit Breath of the Wild centric.
Yeah, and it's kind of once removed too. Like if someone's literally typing in Champions, it could mean a lot of things.
Exactly.
It's run its course.
Yeah. So we started off with myself and two co-hosts, Taylor and Savannah. And if Savannah's watching, I love you, but she was not a good podcaster. She'd be the first person to tell you that. So she was like, yeah, I think I'm just going to stick to writing. And I was like, okay. So Taylor and I did the show for, I don't know, about a year, Alan, would you say? And so, we did our thing. And then eventually, I want to say it was about a year in, I had Alasyn on as a guest. And I was like, oh, went well. And then had Alasyn back again as a guest. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. And then it was like, eventually we got to the point where it was like, well, I guess you're on the show, Al.
Yeah, it kind of felt like, so I've been with Zelda Dungeon since late 2014. I was a writer. And then I kind of just like moved up copy editor and then started with management and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And been going to the marathon since 2017. But with the podcast, it was something that I like had a small interest in, not like too much. Mm-hmm. And I knew that you were kind of struggling because Taylor was too busy and then kind of dropped off a little bit.
It can get tricky.
And I said that I would help him until he found a co-host.
Yeah. and actually, I don't know if I even ever told you that. I really fought for you to stay on because Mossy's the guy who owns Zelda Dungeon that we're chatting with. He is very of the opinion that if you have a role at Zelda Dungeon, you maybe shouldn't have more than one role because you don't want to get overwhelmed. So what I mean by that is like if you're a member of the writing team, you don't want to be on the social team doing social media, or you don't want to be writing guides or whatever, right? And so Alasyn and I were both copy editors, and I was pushing, and he's like, no, Alasyn's already copy editing. We can't have that. She's too overworked. Find someone else.
And Andrew's like, you don't understand.
I
was like, no, I think this is it. Like, let's just do this.
And from my point of view, I was just like, I think I just kind of took it on just because I happened to be there.
How did it feel for you, though, Alasyn, kind of fading into the show?
I thought it was fine. It felt like I said, I thought I was just helping out my buddy, and then it just was more so I was talking with my buddy every week about Zelda, and it just became a regular thing, and now it's
3 years later, here we are.
It's still weird to think about it as a podcast that people actually listen to me, but mostly I just feel like I'm talking to Andy about Zelda and sometimes screaming at him. But it's a really fun experience. And
Alasyn almost hit me today.
It's cool because
in the live stream.
I don't have anybody in my location where I live that I get to talk to Zelda about.
Oh,
so this is like my outlet that I get to nerd out with, because everybody else is like, what the heck are you talking about?
That's totally the same thing for me. Like I don't have a lot of like, some of my friends in real life are kind of into video games, but they're like, hey, have you seen like the new Apex Legend update, or have you seen, maybe like a Smash Bros something, but no one's really into like Zelda or Metroid or any like the more niche hardcore series. It's great to be able to talk about that stuff with people that are also like nerds, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what I tell every guest is like, we're just a bunch of geeks talking about Zelda, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I hear you. I like the name change, by the way. I wanted to say I think it's a good way to go. I love the graphic, all of it. Also, when
MS Paint.
Is that how you made it?
Yeah.
That's how he makes all his.
I did mine ours on Photoshop. I was a little bit leveled up, but no, it looks fantastic. I love the efficiency there, Andy.
Yeah.
When Kate and I were coming up with our show, we were like, what should the name be? We don't really know. And I thought, well, what if we don't? I had Googled Zelda podcasts, and there were a few of them out there, and I said, well, I don't want people to take us too seriously. I just want us to be really passionate. Why don't we just kind of have a little bit of a sense of humor with the title and just say another Zelda podcast?
Yeah,
but
the
producer in me, too, was like, I really want to get the words Zelda and I really want to get the words podcast in there so that when people Google search, and I've heard this, like a lot of our blog writers, they'll talk to me sometimes. Oh, how'd you find the show? And they're like, well, I just wanted to listen to a podcast about Zelda, so I typed in Zelda podcast and he popped up. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whew, we nailed it.
Exactly.
That is the actually like specific reason that, I talked about we wanted to brand our show as a more general Zelda show, which is a reason, but also like our official on every podcast app was the Champions Cast / Zelda Dungeon podcast or whatever. So
Right.
it was a bit wordy. So I was like, let's just get it where it says Zelda and we can call it a day.
Get it right in that text string. Yeah, absolutely.
And I kind of learned the same thing. I have a Metroid podcast as well, and that was the first thing I did. Is like, I don't care what this is called, but it's gonna have the word Metroid right there.
What's the name of that show? I don't even know. I'd love to subscribe.
It is the Omega Metroid podcast, which we somehow do weekly, which is even less news than Zelda right now. So that's been going strong for what, like 2 years?
I think so.
Yeah. So very important to have your the name in the title.
Yeah, I have found that. So, Alasyn, this is your first experience with podcasting? Is this endeavor?
Yes, I haven't done any sort of podcasting or anything remotely like this before I joined.
I see.
Yeah.
And then you had a few experiments before this one, a few shows, it sounds like, Andy. Did you go to school for media or anything like that?
No. My first podcast started, a couple of buddies of mine, we were at a Boston Pizza. Do you guys have Boston Pizza here? Okay, so it's like a restaurant.
Yeah.
We were at a restaurant, and
is there like Boston style pizza, Alasyn? There might be. I don't know.
I don't know either. Their pizza's not even that good, actually. But so cool. We were at a restaurant. I'd been reading this book, and it was called Robopocalypse, and I was just like, guys, what if there was a robot uprising? What would happen? And we went off for like 2 hours, and I was like, we should start a podcast. This is great content. And I think our waitress is like, God, I hope these guys leave soon. So I was pretty convinced that we were making great stuff. Yeah. And that's how we got into podcasting. It was like one little USB, like a snowball mic, and like 4 guys sitting around my kitchen
The same
table.
mic?
Oh, yeah.
Sitting around the same mic, so you get all the room tones coming through.
My cat was crawling across the table
gosh.
and trying to bat it away. And that was our humble origins. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. That's something else. That's great. Cool. Well, we're kind of closing in on our break, but I want to speak a little bit more about podcasting in general. What's it? I love that both of our shows are about the same age. We've kind of been doing the Zelda stuff around the same time, same amount of time. And so in those ways, we're on kind of similar journeys. As, I don't know, just the act of podcasting in general. How do you feel? Oh, you guys... what's your format for your show? It's each week, and it's a little bit of news, and it's a little bit of talk. Isn't that right? Well, you can pitch it a little bit for me.
Kind of, sort of. Like, it's weekly, and there's news if there's news, but most of the time there isn't news. So if there was, let's say if there was a Nintendo Direct, we'll cover it, give our reactions for it. But most of the time, it's just like original content, a lot of sub-series to kind of fill in the blank weeks. One thing that I thought was like important, and you probably pick this out as well, is like if you're gonna do a podcast where there's not a lot of news coming in hot and heavy, like you really kind of got to get your personality out there so people connect with you and want to come back and hear you talk about a game that you might not necessarily be in love with, but at least this girl I've been listening to named Alasyn has an opinion about it, right? Like,
yeah, I hear you. We were nervous about that same fact, Kate and I, with another Zelda podcast, that we designed the show to not have news, just avoid it altogether, because I kind of thought like, well, we've got if we go backwards, we've got 30 years, so we're just going to kind of do the retro stuff.
Yeah.
And so our whole tone is more about kind of reminiscing and whatnot.
Yeah.
And that's been okay, but there have been a few times where something will happen like we kind of do want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And we have to hold back. We have to make sure it doesn't get into the show a little bit.
I think if we had the exact format as you with seasons, I think we would be strictly evergreen content and just like stuff that you can go back to and visit all the time. Because what we tried to clip some of our shows, and we've done that, in fact, where like you can get like little 5-minute, 10-minute clips or whatever, and like
I think you have some on YouTube. I think I saw some.
Yeah. And of course, like if you're clipping like a reaction to a Nintendo Direct, for example, it's not really time sensitive, so like you can only process it that week or maybe the week after, and then that's your opportunity to get that content. But if we're talking about like if we're ranking the dungeons of A Link to the Past, you can go look at that in 5 years and be like, man, these guys are awful. What are they talking about?
No. Yeah, I see. So just being in the podcast world, how does it feel for both of you? Because we're going to break here in a few minutes. I just didn't know if you want to talk about podcasting in general.
Like I said, it's still even though I've been doing it for like 3 years now, it still feels kind of odd to me. I just like seriously feel like I'm just talking to Andy about Zelda, and then it's odd that people actually listen to, like, I don't know, because sometimes I think my opinions, everybody has different opinions about the series and stuff, and so it just is kind of like an odd feeling that people care about what I have to say. I used to stream and stuff, and that was a little bit easier because I could just talk about whatever. and then play Zelda games.
I'm fascinated right now. So in your opinion, streaming's easier? Because I feel like I couldn't even stream. I don't even know if I have that skill set.
I just like it because I do a lot of goofy things while I'm playing my games.
Okay.
And
the thing with streaming is like you have something in front of you that you can default to.
Yes.
And talk about
Yeah.
as well.
So that, and like it can also be you can take a break for a second and focus, and people can focus on the game as well.
Interesting.
So you don't always have to be thinking of what your next words are. Because that's another thing I struggle with on the podcast is like, I feel very knowledgeable about the Zelda series, but as soon as you're on, for that hour that we're on,
when that red light comes
everything
on.
leaves my brain, and I can't. Everybody knows that I suck at like remembering Zelda games or like names and stuff like that.
I just saw you just raised your hands. I saw your tattoo. It's amazing.
I do have a Zelda tattoo.
Can you describe it for the audience?
So it's an arrow. The tip is the Triforce, and then along the arrow, like the shaft is the spiritual stones, and it's like a watercolor kind of deal.
Too cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's how I feel. Like sometimes it's just like
I feel like you podcast as if nobody's listening.
Yeah.
Because, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you have to. I think if you're just like, oh God, I hope I don't like say something stupid to the like a couple thousand people every. It's just like.
You kind of just have to accept that there's going to be times where you say something kind of stupid and you just go with it.
You
like Wind Waker pacing is a 5 out of 5.
Our big thing was we had a quiz where like we got one of the answers wrong and we said, every week I get some tweet about how actually you can control coffee in Majora's Mask. And you just got to roll with it. You go, of course.
Camera.
And you own it and you talk about it. You know what I mean? But that's also kind of like, I think if you have that attitude, which I feel both of our shows do, that does allow you to just kind of be part of the community. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think my favorite part is when we do get news, because that's new and it's exciting, and it's like initial reactions and stuff like that. I love that bit of it.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's easier for sure to react when there's something to react to, but I don't know. I do feel like it's kind of rewarding. Like when you come up with we have a lot of sub series on our shows. So like if you come up with an idea, like we did something called Zelda's percentages. So it's like, we're going to read this statement and you give a percentage about if you think it's going to come true or not. And then, like when you kind of find like a sub series that hits and you're like, okay, like this was a good it was a good show, and like we can come back to this format and whatever. Like specifically even on the Metroid side, I have a lot of like sub series because like obviously there's never any Metroid news, right? So like I feel like I like reacting to news as well, but I do like finding like a creative sub-series that I know is going to give us like some legs to go and do future shows.
I'd like to drill in on that a little bit. When you say sub-series, is that like a theme or a style of an episode, a repeating narrative or something? So
I'll use my Metroid one because I have a little bit more sub-series in that one. But so for Metroid, there's obviously not very much Metroid news. So what we'll do is we'll have like a sub-series called Inspired by Metroid, where we'll talk about a Metroidvania. And we actually do this on the Zelda cast too, where like we'll talk about some like Zelda-like games like Tunic or like
we talked about Tunic recently.
Other
shows where it's like definitive ranking. So we'll take a game and you rank like the 10 aspects that make it a Zelda game on a scale of 1 to 5. And you can do that for every game in the series. In the the Zelda's percentages ones that I just laid out. And on the Metroid side, we have like an Alien and review series, because that movie franchise was very influential on the games itself.
Sure,
so like,
I see.
We do like a lot of just like fan Q&A too, and we do specific to like games. So like ask us a question about Twilight Princess or Triforce Heroes or whatever. So like kind of like having little sub-series that you can come back to when you're just like, what did we record about this week? And it's like, well, we haven't done a dungeon dive in forever. So let's talk about the Forest Temple from Ocarina of Time this week.
I know we're about to go to break, but I just want to talk about a little inside baseball, because you said like, what do we talk about this week? How far forward do you find you schedule your episodes?
Oh boy.
I think it depends. Like sometimes, and I'm going to say Andy comes up with most of the ideas. I'm just not very like, I struggle with that, with the creative side of that thing. But so he'll be like, okay, here's some ideas that I just cooked up yesterday, and it'll be like a few weeks, right? Mm-hmm. And then sometimes it's just like, what are we going to talk about?
Sometimes it's like literally the 5 minutes, and it's like, all right, what do you want to talk about today? We're recording in 5 minutes. But other times when, I mean, it's dependent on like news and stuff like that too, because if you have an announcement like the last Breath of the Wild trailer, you can say like, let's talk about what we learned in there. Let's talk about what we think might happen. And you can kind of map out shows like that. But if you're in a time right now, for example, it's like you got to dig a little bit deeper and say like, okay, we're gonna talk about like Tinkle's Rosy Rupee Land next. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like, so sometimes when the creative juices are flowing, we can schedule out a couple weeks in advance, like topics. And I think that's where I like to operate. But we typically don't announce what we're going to talk about week to week because it's a floating.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Now I have another question. We do every other week. It was a little bit for me to get to Kate, which we talked about off air. Just me literally driving to Milwaukee. But it was also a little bit. I was kind of thinking like I don't think. We typically do 22, 24 episode seasons.
Right.
And I was like, I don't think we can do one a week, honestly, if we're going to do it the format that we do.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, do you ever, with every week, that really like intimidates me personally as a producer, do you do the thing where you have a couple episodes to, like if you miss a week that you can fill it, you keep some in the bank kind of thing? We do that a little bit with AZP.
Nope.
I mean,
it's like go,
yeah.
huh?
We honestly don't miss weeks very often. I know we recently both got sick, and so neither of us could record. So we threw out like a really old episode that had like it's been 3 years since it aired.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like
throw a little intro in front of it or whatever.
Throwback. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think like you probably know this as well. Like you have to be consistent. Like if you're gonna be weekly, then you have to be weekly, and like. Yep. You got to think of something, and we've recorded a lot of shows before where we turned it off and we're just like, that
wasn't the best.
That one wasn't the best. I mean, that's just the reality of it, right? Like some shows are just like, man, that was awesome. We were firing on all cylinders, and other ones that you're just looking and it's like, okay, we're at 55 minutes. Let's get to an hour and get out of here, right? But at least you have a show and you've produced a show and you haven't just said like, because that's how the Zelda Informer podcast died, right? Because like. Not sure what to talk about. Let's take this week off and come back next week. And then that happens. And then, From
experience, I had a different show like 10 years ago. The best way to kill an audience is to have an inconsistent release schedule.
Yes.
And even for us, we thought like, well, 2 weeks, is that too far apart? But we thought if we just own it and we just say it's every other week and our audience can get used to it, I think we'll be okay.
I believe you could do monthly. Like you could do, if you were just like, I'm going to release 2 podcasts a year and it's going to be on June 1st and September 1st.
But your audience knows.
Yeah. So I think it's just like, you got to set it and stick to it. And like, even if it's not the best, at least you've still delivered something. And it's sometimes if we've had an episode that I think we are a little bit down on, like, we did a mini boss episode not even that long ago, and I don't know, it was all right.
It was all right when we finished it. We were like, oh, this didn't feel as good as we thought it was going to be, but it actually wound up being.
Yeah, we had a lot of people say.
A lot of people really loved it.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So it sometimes. I mean, there's been times where I knew that we've recorded a stinker for sure. Yeah. But I mean, I think the times where I shut it off and been like, okay, that was awesome. Definitely.
Yeah.
We've only not released 2 episodes so far out of all 5 seasons, where we had one that was such a dud that we thought maybe we re-explore this one later, Yeah. And it has happened once in a while. And then you gotta get real creative and start moving your episodes around. Yes. But I think we go to break. This has been a blast. Thank you so much. We're just kind of chatting about making podcasts and everything else. I love it.
Awesome.
We'll go to break, and when we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit more about actual Zelda.
Let's do it.
Sound good?
Sweet. Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, this is TC.
And this is Jim from the Studio Demands It podcast,
Where every episode we take a demand from a hypothetical studio,
which could be you,
and challenge ourselves to conceptualize, pitch, and craft a film based on the stipulations
or the demands
we are given. We talk about movies all the time. Particularly, we complain about the choices made in the films we've seen.
We're nerds like that.
And, of course, like any good nerd does, we automatically assume that we could do better.
Even with the demands and restrictions that clearly must have been put on by a production.
So head on over to StudioDemandsIt.com and listen to our previous library of episodes. Our library of previous episodes. Our precious library, Jim. Our library of precious episodes.
You're a pirate, Smeagol.
Okay. So head on over to StudioDemandsIt.com to listen to our library of episodes.
And submit your demand for a future episode, too.
So go do that.
Okay, bye.
Okay, end of ad.
Has this ever happened to you?
This video game is bullshit!
Are you tired of gaping plot holes and boring gameplay mechanics?
Look, all I'm saying is that if a full-fledged Krogan is falling off a platform, there's no way Commander Shepard has the upper arm strength to pull him up.
Has reading become just too tedious of a chore?
Ugh, books.
Are you bored of your same 3 murder podcasts?
Shocking. It's The Butler.
Allow me to introduce you to the brand new fan fiction podcast with an X, hosted by our lovely basement-dwelling and real-life Muppet, Dan McCoy.
Well, that's hurtful.
And myself, of course, the blonde bombshell with the blood of Odin and the great looks of Jake Busey from Starship Troopers.
That's accurate.
And with our powers combined.
No.
Oh, you never let me do what I want to do.
I said no, man. We're not doing that.
Fine. Anyway, you can find us on Apple Podcasts wherever you get your fix from. Remember, fan fiction with an X.
Hi everybody, David here. I just wanted to take a second to tell you about Another Zelda Podcast's brand new merch store. Yes, we've opened up the store to celebrate the beginning of Season 5. In fact, I'd like to tell you about our Another Zelda Podcast logo t-shirt. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's our logo on a classic t-shirt, but yeah, it does look pretty neat, especially on the 20 different shirt colors that you can select. All of the staple colors like red and green and black are there, but there's also asphalt, military green, slate, royal heather. I'm not joking, that's one of the color selections. So if you're interested in displaying your Another Zelda Podcast fandom, head on over to our website, anotherzeldapodcast.com, and click on the merch tab in our main menu right up on the top of the screen there. All right, let's get back to the show. Okay, we are back, and Andy and Alasyn, thank you so much again for spending this time with me. I know that there's a lot going on. I know the Lynx Crossbow training is coming up soon.
Oh,
the
yeah,
tournament,
I can't miss that.
of which I'm sure you both are very excited to be a part of.
I mean, I'm a part of it. Are you in it?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm playing like 12 hours of Twilight Princess.
That's
I don't
right.
need any more.
And roll
You don't need
gold,
any more of that
too.
engine.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I've never played it before, actually.
Oh, it's
There you
fun.
go.
I actually love it. I have a good time with Lynx Crossbow training. I enjoy it.
It's fine. You know, it's fine.
I think, well, I kind of got excited about, I don't want to get too far off the topic. I kind of got excited about, there was like a Duck Hunt adjacent mini game in Wii Play that
Oh, the Wii U.
yeah, the Wii Play. It was like Wii Sports, and then Wii Play came out later, and Wii
Oh.
Play was mostly about like shooting things on the screen.
Mm.
And there was like a target attack mode in that, and I actually really had a fun time with that.
Right.
And so then when Link's Crossbow Training came out, I was like, oh, it's just a better and Zelda version of that game. I'm in.
There you go.
Some of them
Yeah.
are a little more complicated than others. Some the screen moves for you. Some you have to actually kind of do the walking.
Oh, okay.
So, anyways,
I'm not gonna do well. I'll just say that.
I'll be cheering from you.
I think my favorite ones are like sometimes they'll throw you on the back of a wagon and then have the bokoblins attack you, and you kind of on the move. You're trying to shoot them. That's kind of fun.
Okay.
Anyways,
Okay.
there's like even I think there's a Star-Lord fight in it. I think he comes back in the desert.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Maybe King Bulbin shows up at some point. That'd be good.
He just might. They've
That'd
got
be-
the
that'd be
asset.
good.
Throw him
Yeah.
in there, right?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so what I want to kind of spend the second half here chatting a little bit, like I said, a little bit more about Zelda. We've talked about how we kind of talked about how we started podcasting,
Mm-hmm.
but Andy, maybe I'll start with you. What was there? When did you? I'm not sure how to ask this because I don't want it to be. It doesn't need to be a specific moment. But when did you kind of realize that you were
I have a specific moment
feeling
actually.
the Zelda vibes?
Yeah, so it was a very specific moment that I still remember to this day.
Well.
So I was, I don't know, like 12 when Ocarina of Time came out, and
Oh my God, I'm so much older than you guys.
so when, so before Ocarina of Time,
Uh-huh.
I was a kid that I played video games like Super Mario World and stuff like that, and video games were kind of something that were fun to do, and like it was just a fun thing to play or whatever. Like it wasn't really anything more than that. It was kind of like watching a baseball game on TV. Like this is fun. And then I played Ocarina of Time, and when I got to, there was a very specific moment actually when I got to the Forest Temple in that game, and I had like an out of body experience, as lame as that sounds. It was so, I would like the music and the way that it was, and then I got to the center and there was like the four
Yes.
flames with the Poe sisters. I was like, this is incredible. Like video games aren't just like jumping and bopping on Goombas and stuff. Like this is like a cinematic, like ethereal experience, and I was just like hooked on that. And like that Forest Temple, like I think about that all the time actually. That Forest Temple moment, and like, God, I wish I could relive it. It was so awesome. But that moment to me was just like, this is what video games can be. Like this is like art. Like this is and like unbelievable. And I'm 12 years old playing this game, and I'm not very good, but I knew like in that moment I was like, this is something like very, very special. And like it's funny because like I do have a specific moment. I'm not sure if a lot of people do, but like I very vividly remember going into the Forest Temple for the first time and hearing the rising and the falling of the whatever instruments are there.
Synth or whatever,
Yeah.
It was just like so. I was like, okay, this is what a video game can be. This is awesome.
It's a strong temple. Like, and it might even be the best stylized or aesthetic temple. The Spirit Temple kind of gets there too, but I think the Forest Temple. Every time I replay Ocarina, they've all the extra effort of having the vines hanging down and everything. I forget about a lot of that sometimes.
Yeah,
and it's such a strong point in the game.
It's my favorite temple. Actually, if we did a Zelda Dungeon staff feature like a year ago or so, we pulled, I think there were about 50 people.
Yeah.
And it was like a point system. Your top dungeon got 10 points, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think the Forest Temple actually finished first.
Oh, really?
Overall,
got put in the list and people rated it.
Yeah.
It's also the first time in Ocarina where you really, the first 3 kind of mini dungeons or whatever, they're fine and they're good and they're kind of teaching you how to play the game. But the Forest Temple is the first one, in my opinion, where they drop you into that hub and you just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And you just live in there for a while and slowly start putting the pieces together. I can see how that could be an emotional experience.
Well, like when I was like 12, I did the first 3 dungeons, and I was, we did the Ganondorf deal at the bridge, and I was like, well, that was a great game, like that, I loved this game. It was awesome. It was really fun. But then it was like you were just scratching the surface, and it was just incredible. And then I feel like I've had a couple moments like that, like playing Skyward Sword. That story I thought was incredible. Watching the trailer for Breath of the Wild, the 2017 Switch trailer, was like one of the most incredible Zelda moments I've ever had in my life.
I used to make people sit down and watch it.
I'm getting goosebumps right now actually just talking about it. It's so awesome. We did a whole show talking about that trailer.
Yeah, we did. It was very good.
So that was it for me.
Alasyn, when did you get interested in Zelda?
I know that Zelda has been a part of my life since I was born because I have very early memories of seeing family members play. Like I specifically remember like the pyramid kind of from Dark World of A Link to the Past.
Yeah.
And then riding Epona in Longmont Ranch on Ocarina of Time. But I do have 3 very distinct moments, and I'll try not to make them like long-winded.
Go for it. We've got plenty of time. It's okay.
Our first, and I played a lot of when I was a child, our Zelda games were played together because I have 5 brothers.
Whoa.
Yeah.
only sister?
I have one sister.
Oh, I see.
But she wasn't really interested. But so we shared. So we had an SNES. We played A Link to the Past. That was our first Zelda game that I played. And we did that together, and it was great. I remember my brothers being mad because we bought it at a yard sale, and I deleted the save files. So I was like, you have to start from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
No,
but they were mad at me because they were like, well, they have all the stuff already.
We could have played that one.
And then the next one was bigger, like a bigger moment where we got a GameCube for Christmas with the collector's edition Zelda, and we played Ocarina of Time together.
Amazing.
And we used the guide and all that kind of stuff, and then Majora's Mask together. And then I kind of grew up, I went through life, and then my come back to Zelda moment where I've been with Zelda Dungeon and Zelda since that day forever is I was in the military. It was 2013, and I wasn't having a very good time with life, and I picked up Link Between Worlds.
Okay.
And that's the game that got me back into the series.
Wow.
I loved it so much. I remember using Zelda Dungeon to get through it, and then I immediately went and bought a Wii U and Wind Waker HD, and I played that. And then I went and got Skyward Sword, and I played that.
Oh my god, I love
this. And then I joined Zelda Dungeon the next year, and it's been like that ever since.
Since you brought it up, how did you join Zelda Dungeon? Because you mentioned you would use it for probably some walkthroughs and whatnot. Did you just send an email one day, or?
Well, so Moss Yusukopian, he's the owner of Zelda Dungeon.
He's the gentleman whose house we're in right now for the stream, and we are
whose mansion,
completely surrounded by amazing Zelda figures right now.
Yes. So he used to put out ads on the front page for if you wanted to be a writer and volunteer and that kind of stuff. So I volunteered to be a writer because I was really into writing at the time. Still am, just not as much anymore. But I sent him a piece, and he was like, can you redo that? He's like, that's not very good.
Was it like an audition piece? It was like a...
just there was an assignment? Give, not really assignment, just give an example of your writing,
Said, can you please rewrite it? Okay, fair enough.
I don't know if he remembers that, but... and then he brought me on in December of 2014. And then my first piece, because I kind of hang back for a month watching everybody else because I was really nervous and shy and stuff. But my first piece was about, I think, the gyroscope for Majora's Mask 3D.
Oh,
Because that was
wow.
news that came out at that time.
Sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was like probably my introduction into ZD. And
Rewrite it.
Did you rewrite it?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Send
I-
it back. And he's like,
Tells
okay.
you
So
to
Because
rewrite.
I was
he
used,
said this will do.
Yeah, I was used to creative writing, so I like put too much details. This needed to be a news post.
Oh, because
Yeah.
it was.
We have that
Yes.
problem all the time, actually,
Yeah.
like with news or we have daily debates that go out, and it's really like a question with like a paragraph of flavor text, and like I think a lot of new writers we found like they start to editorialize versus like just putting a question out there into the world. It's very, very, very
Interesting.
common.
Yeah, so he was just like, yeah, can you rewrite that? And in typical Mossy's language at the time, I was just like, oh my God.
Alasyn, please rewrite.
Yeah.
Either of you, what was your like school experience? What did you? I went to school for film and video, so I kind of like had the media stuff. Did you have like communications type in things? Because
Nope.
Because I do not know how to write things like that. My joke is I podcast because I can't write.
Yeah.
And so like you guys are kind of blowing my mind right now that you can just put this stuff together.
I took creative writing classes and I was on the newspaper in high school.
Yeah.
But I was more leaning towards creative writing. And then now, actually, I went to school and stuff for my AA, but now I'd love to go back to school to get into technical editing.
Interesting.
Because
I
I can
went
make a
to-
career out of that.
I did like some productions, like video editing and stuff, but I never did any kind of writing at all. Like
Mhm.
my writing sample when I joined was like
I was going to ask.
I had just seen Suicide Squad and Batman versus Superman, which I think kind of got poo-pooed a little bit by a lot of people.
Mhm.
And so I wrote a review on Facebook Notes. Facebook Notes when that was a thing. And I don't know what I was doing. I was like, these movies are great. So I sent in the latest Breath of the Wild trailer just come out, and I was like, yeah, I'll they were looking for volunteers. I was like, I'll join Zelda Dungeon, which was actually there were two
Zelda-
websites, the Zelda
yeah.
Informer and Zelda Dungeon, which used to be separate entities. So I actually joined Zelda Informer.
I remember when they
Yep.
Yes.
connected. Yeah.
So Al was part of the ZD team. I was part of the ZI team, and then we became one big happy family. But yeah, I sent in like a Facebook note that was like, this is why Batman versus Superman rocks. You should like it. So yeah, that's how we got there. I had never really written before, but I think I made a blog post about why onions were gross, and then that's the only other writing I'd really done. But I loved it.
We have one guy who has been on the show a few times. His name's Dan McCoy, and he now has a spin-off show for 6.5, my little company that I have, and it's called Fan Fiction. And he also feels that those movies are great. So maybe if you ever see him
Yeah.
in passing on social,
Yes.
that's another one. That's like the only other person on the planet that I know
Yes. All right.
that thinks
Nice.
those things are great.
Hit me up, Dan. Yeah, let's chat. Yeah, no, that's
That's
how it
cool.
started.
Man alive! Wow. So that's really quite the journey, honestly, for everybody. I could sit here and tell you what mine is, but I've already talked about it on the show, honestly, as I think about it. But it was the quick version is that it was basically it was kind of a 2-step process. It was, well, it's almost like a 0.5 and then like a 3-step process. I just realized I kind of rented the original Legend of Zelda back when I was a kid. Like 10 or 11 or 12, the original Legend of Zelda was out. And I thought, oh, this is a great thing that I would rent from the video game stores. And I was horrible at it. And I would always try to play it, but it kind of spooked me and kind of scared me because I was a bit younger. Maybe I wasn't 12. Maybe I was 3rd grade or something. But anyway, so that was kind of like, I remember in that moment, I was like, Zelda is cool, but scary, and I can't play it. Way too hard for me.
Yeah.
Some other day.
Yeah.
And then I actually didn't pay any attention to Zelda at all. I went into high school. While I was in junior high is when Link's Awakening, the first one, came out.
Right.
And I remember my friends kind of talking about it, and I was like, Zelda on the Game Boy? That's craziness. I don't even know how this game works, but it's on a Game Boy? That's insane. And so I didn't pay any attention to Link's Awakening at all. And then a few years in, I was going into high school, and that's around the time when Chrono Trigger came out, and I was really getting into role-playing games.
Yes.
Like Super Nintendo Chrono Trigger. I was there for it. It was great.
That's a top tier.
That was definitely one of those experiences. Like, well, this is interesting artwork, and then you put it in, you're like, what am I playing? This is the best game in the world. But anyway, I digress because I was kind of like, oh, well, I really think I want to try to have a role playing game experience on my Game Boy. And like my birthday was coming up or whatever it was, and I kind of like. I was looking at it, I was like, maybe a Final Fantasy game. They had Tactics or whatever it was, Final Fantasy Adventure, whatever it was. And I kind of thought to myself, I wonder if I could play that Zelda game that people talked about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I like kind of reluctantly put on my little wish list for birthday, like The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, and I got it. And I put it in, and I didn't really even know how a Zelda game worked. And it was like, I was like years late into this, you know what I mean? 4 Zelda games had already come out. I was basically just a year or two before Ocarina came out is when I kind of entered this situation. And I absolutely loved it. It was a lot of fun. I didn't. One of the fun facts is because I started with Link's Awakening, I didn't know that there was supposed to be a Zelda. I didn't know that there was supposed to be a Ganon. I
guess you wouldn't.
You
I know.
wouldn't.
I was like, well, Koholint Island is where all of this takes place.
Yeah. That's wild. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
And so then I was really getting excited about video games. I was getting excited about the Nintendo 64 coming out. The Nintendo 64 came out when I was 8th or 9th grade or something like that. I wasn't in college yet, and it was just like when dial-up internet was there, and so you'd like on my lunch breaks at school. We had open lunch back then. I'm making this story way too long. We had open lunch, and my house was only about an hour or a mile away from where my high school was. So like, and back then 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th was all in one high school. They didn't have a middle school thing, and so we had open lunches because that's a thing that happened in the early 90s. And I would drive home, load up, make a sandwich or something, get on the computer, try to load up the Nintendo website. It would take minutes for like 4 articles to show up, the graphics to show. I'd look for anything Zelda, and I'd get Ocarina, I'd find Ocarina. I thought it was so cool. It was called Zelda 64 at the time.
Yeah.
And I was getting so excited. And and that's when I realized, like, oh, I think I really like this series. I was getting really excited about Ocarina, and then where I really dove in deep was one day I was on the website on my lunch break. Lunch break is so funny to say it that way. But that I got up the guts. There was like a button on the website, and it was something like, got a question for us? Send in, a newsletter, letter, or whatever. And so I got up the courage, and I clicked the button, and I typed something about, I asked them if the 3D Zelda was going to, because I realized with Link's Awakening, the screen scrolling stuff, and I was like, how are they going to do that in 3D? And I asked them something about, like, will it be like Resident Evil where there's screen, with just different screens,
like the set backgrounds,
or will there not be the screen scrolling in the Nintendo 64 version or whatever? And actually, like, side note, they did do a little bit of that screen scrolling when you're getting into the castle and stuff in the early days. Right. So I think they maybe experimented with that. But anyway, I clicked submit, never heard back. But I just like emotionally, like I was invested enough to like have the guts to put in like a whatever it is, a newsletter or a memo thing, and that's when I kind of realized I was like, okay, I think I'm digging this, and it was kind of I got excited about Zelda ever since.
Man, I would have loved to like be on that hype train for the, coming into 3D for the first time, the Zelda series, and just. Oh, that would have been so exciting.
It was an exciting time. Like this stuff got talked about at the lunch tables, so to speak. Like everybody was talking about, how does Mario get 3D? How does blah, blah, blah get 3D? PlayStation had already come out for like a year, but the 3D wasn't great in that first one. Everything was really pixely, but it was cool. And so it was a very exciting time. But anyway.
I remember having some conversations like that with Metroid. I'm a big Metroid fan. And like when Prime was coming out, I was in high school, and like it was like, okay, like how are we, I'd met this Samus character in Smash Bros. Like, why isn't there a 3D Metroid? How could that work and stuff? And then like I remember when it was like the first person was like, whoa.
Yeah. So I saw a couple pictures of it, and I kind of thought like, I don't know, guys. First person Metroid. Because you imagine it's going to be like a run and gunner or something, or like some kind of, but it wasn't. It was just first person. It wasn't really a first person shooter per se. It was a first person adventure game. They nailed it.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was a fun fact. There was a time when Zelda 64 was going to be in first person.
I think we found that out.
We figured that out. That was cool.
That is unbelievable.
I think we were asked if we wanted to have a Link in the first person, and I said no.
Yeah, I think I kind of like seeing Link. It makes it feel a little bit more like an adventure game. I've dabbled with a little bit of Skyrim on the Switch over the last year or two. I was very late to the game for Skyrim. And I find myself playing it in first person, but I actually would prefer the third. I just don't love how it they do the Resident Evil camera where it's like on the side and you really can't see what you're doing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. With that kind of game, I would prefer the first person because you can actually feel yourself fit into that role. Like,
I think Link is like a character now.
His own character now.
Well, if I may, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but Miyamoto said as such.
Yes,
he basically said
that was his. Yeah,
you're not playing as you; you're playing as this thing, this guy.
Exactly. That was
I think Link kind of started as like the link between the player and the world, and he started as an avatar, but I think he's very much clearly defined character now. Even though I know he doesn't talk or anything like that, and it's technically a different Link every game, but I think like the Link characteristics are very clearly defined.
I agree, and it is so weird how there's so many links. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? But
right.
it all still kind of feels like the same thing. You don't have so many Marios. That's totally different. And Mario does talk. It's a completely different emotional experience. You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, cool. This was a lot of fun, guys. I think I don't want to take. I know we're getting into the crossbow training, and I really enjoyed the chat. This was a slightly quicker second half here. Is there anything else you guys
Oh, we
want
can
to
go
say?
as long as you want.
Yeah, we can go as long as you want.
Rock,
You got any other questions?
We kind of did our shares. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, making the show, that was all cool. Zelda Dungeon's pretty cool. How long have you been coming to these marathons?
I've been since 2017. I missed 2020 because of,
Oh,
COVID.
right.
Yes.
But
2018 was my first, and in 2019 I missed the last two because international travel was not so easy.
Right.
So yeah, it's been 3 years since I seen this one in person. So
In
it's very
person,
nice.
and you guys have been hosting a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talk every week, but
Yep.
yeah, it's something hits different when you see.
and we don't just do the podcast. We also like help the writing team for Zelda Dungeon
Yeah.
together. So
we'll have like writers meetings and stuff, and like there's another like we're involved with like the running of the actual website as well. So like the news, the original content, stuff like that. So yeah, we'll get together and collaborate. Actually, we have another. So there's 4 Zelda Dungeon management here, and Alasyn and I are 2 of them, and then the other one is, I think she's downstairs right now. Her name's Judy, and then Rod is flying in tomorrow. So it's going to be the first time the 4 of us have ever been together. And Judy came from
my
Northern
gosh.
Ireland, actually. So
Oh my gosh.
she took a trip to get here.
Mm-hmm.
So
This is
yeah.
so cool.
And we're all playing Ocarina of Time together.
We are. It's a copy editor race. And, we were talking earlier about some specific moments, and like I think I would be remiss if I said like the Zelda Dungeon Marathon is like a moment, right? Because like I was very nervous about coming here my first year. I was like, there's like 30 people I don't know. Like, am I gonna suck at this game? And like are they gonna hate me? Am I gonna say a boot? Like, whatever. Like, so I come here, and it was so awesome. And even though like you talked to people before, like meeting them in person is different, but it was like so awesome. And like I actually, whenever I interview like writers for the site, I'm just like, like get to know people, because like it's really fun to write about Zelda and to talk about Zelda and stuff like that. But that's not why people stay at Zelda Dungeon, right? It's like you stay because you meet people like Alasyn, or you meet people like Gooey or Moss or whatever, right? And you're just like, it's like, man, these guys are like some of my best friends now, right? Like, so like you come for the Zelda, you stay for the
friendship.
You stay for the friendship. Yeah, that's a
very
great way
true.
to put it. Yeah,
I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I know it sounds lame and it sounds cheesy, but by God, it is the truth. It is the truth. Like the people that have been, we have many staff members that have been here like many years. Like a lot of people have been here even longer than like I have, and some predate Alasyn as well. So like, it's very much like this would be this whole like Zelda Dungeon, and then like specifically the Zelda Dungeon Marathon, I think would be collectively like a top like moment as well, because like it just kind of changes how you like view the series when it becomes like, going from a kid that plays Zelda, playing video games, and like, wow, this is art, and like this is like a fantastic video game series, like wow, this is like a community of people that I like respect and trust, and it's just it changes, and it's an evolving it's an evolving thing.
Yes, and like I said earlier, it's really hard to find people that you actually live around
Yeah.
to do stuff like this with. So some people can only show up to the marathon for so long, but I make it a deal where I have to stay the whole time, because I'm like, if I'm gonna go see these people and I'm gonna go play Zelda games, and I'm gonna stay the whole time.
If I'm going through customs, I'm staying for 8 days.
If I'm gonna work for all this PTO, I'm using it all on this event.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Totally.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
because I get to see all these people and hang out with them too. Like we get to do a really cool thing with the charity and the gaming and the stream, but I also get to see some of my best friends. So
Yeah,
I love it.
And the cool thing about it is like once you come once, I think typically you want to come back.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to miss any of it.
Well, this
Like,
is an event. This
Yes.
this is way bigger than I
Yeah.
even expected.
I mean, case in point, like you got to come next year too, right? Like
I'll
even
swing
later
by.
this week.
Now
I
that
mean,
I'm
like
in
he's like,
Chicago.
I'm in.
Yeah,
I'll be
swing
here.
by. Maybe we can bring some more of the AZP people over.
Absolutely,
Have them be part
yeah.
of the streams or
We have
whatever.
guests
Totally.
from
Yeah,
all
you know.
over. So
we have so many guys that like part of it is like great. Like I can't wait to see Alasyn again, but like part of it's also just like I've never met Corey in person, or like I've never met Lulu in person. I'm really looking forward to meeting them. Or like part of it is just like, there's a girl downstairs. Her name is Palm, and it's like, nice to meet you. Like, what do? You play Zelda? Great. Like, let's do you want to go to burger or something? And then we can talk about and it's just like it's just an eclectic an eclectic cast of characters.
So does he put you guys up here for the week? Basically, you just kind of find
We
couches
sleep upstairs.
and
Yeah.
there's some rooms upstairs.
Inflatable mattresses.
So
Amazing.
the sleeping situation is
We're kind of
fluid.
getting into the meat and potatoes of the stream here,
Yeah.
or the marathon. I'm okay with this. I didn't know
Yeah.
we were going to talk about all this. I love it.
Yeah.
It's so I mean, because it's 24/7, there's always some people sleeping, or there's usually some people sleeping. So upstairs is mostly booked for people that are passed out or whatever. But yeah, you basically crash where you can for as long as you can. I think I've slept about 3 hours in the last 2 days. So
I got a good night's sleep last night.
Yeah.
That was good.
yeah, I tried to convince Alasyn to stay up with me. She's like, no. I've had
You're
enough.
holding on, Andy. You're doing okay.
I got my second win. I made some strong coffee this morning.
Was that what it
So,
was?
Yeah.
It's not the same too as when I was coming in 2017 and I was 24 and I could handle staying up really
Oh
late.
my
gosh,
and
that's a
now
whole
I'm
thing.
almost
Yeah.
30 and I'm like,
Almost 30.
I
Oh
need
my
sleep.
God.
You children.
Yeah, I keep telling Alasyn when you turn 30, it's all downhill from there.
It does. Yeah, 30 starts to go down. 36 was a big one for me where it was really you actually start getting tired and all that kind of stuff. Like an
Oh,
all-nighter
man.
actually ruins you after 36.
Oh no.
I'm
Sweet.
just getting into my I'm 41 now. I'm just getting into my 40s and I'm kind of like, oh man, what's coming up next?
Oh, no.
To get here today, I only got 6 hours of sleep last night.
Yeah.
because I was working and doing some stuff, and I was nervous about that. Will I get enough sleep? It's like, what, you old man? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
reality, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Were you nervous the first year that you came here? Like, I was incredibly nervous.
Actually,
coming.
I was so nervous because Moss invited me in 2016, and I said no. I chickened out.
He invited me in
Oh.
2017, and I said no as well.
Yeah.
Wait, why would you say no? Just because it's like a little intimidating?
Well, I mean, I had personal reasons,
Sure.
and I also just came out of the military and had like 0 friends. I was trying to recreate my friend group, and it was really weird to think about going to meet a bunch of people that I hung out with on the internet.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because
But-
I grew up being told don't trust people on the internet.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, and probably I'm assuming for you too, like I hadn't been with Zelda Dungeon very long. I was with Zelda Dungeon for like 6 months. He's like, hey, do you want to like fly to Chicago and come play Zelda games? And like at that point in my run, like I've played a lot of Zelda games for like our podcast specifically to like refresh memory or like notice different things, like play it with more of a critical eye.
Yeah.
And so like I had played like every Zelda game, but I hadn't like I would say we don't speed run here, but we do.
We try to get through it a little
we
bit
kind of do.
quickly.
Like
Yeah,
you're on a
swift,
schedule,
swift
right?
run, right?
Yeah.
So you're on a schedule, so you have to hit a certain time, and like you don't necessarily have to be doing crazy stuff, but like you have to be, all the players. So like we're playing Ocarina of Time, all of us, and like we all have to be in and around like the same time of beating the game, so that the next game can start or whatever. And like it's very, very antithetical to how I like to play Zelda games. Just like you go explore and you collect hearts and you know what's over here. And so like when you're playing Ocarina of Time, it's like, all right, like I gotta move my butt to the forest temple and then to the water temple, and like don't forget that key. It's like
I'm
So it's
100% an
stressful.
explorer when I play Zelda games.
Yes.
So I've never, even between breaks here when we were on our break of recording this show, there was some chatter about speed runs and stuff in the other room. And I kind of thought to myself, like, wow, it's amazing to watch those. I don't know if I have it in me. I don't know. You know what I
It's
mean? It's like a
hard.
totally different style of play.
I used to be really into
Alasyn
it.
is a good speedrunner.
I used to be really into it and like got into it, like looking up all the tricks and strats and stuff, but I find it can be a bit exhausting. So I've kind of felt like been petering off of it a little bit because I also really like to explore. So
Well, I've actually been working on a gimmick here for the last few years of like being so bad that like that I actually, so I'm never expected to win, and the expectations for me personally are so low that like all I have to do is show up and play the game. Like my gimmick is like people can laugh at how bad I am, but it's great because like I don't have to practice a bunch of times in a row. I can do like one playthrough and it's like, all right, I'm still bad.
Oh,
Let's
well,
go.
I did it.
Yeah. I
too
heard
funny.
it goats. Let's do it.
It's kind of funny. Kate she'll joke about me sometimes. She'll, speaking to like how I play video games, she said if David walks into a room, she didn't say it exactly this way, but if David walks into the room and there's a sign pointing with an arrow to the right, he goes to the left.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
I
Yes.
always try to
I
find
do
the
the
nooks
same
and
thing.
crannies and stuff. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
because you don't know what you're gonna miss.
I
I did
know.
the same with Tunic. I wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, have you played Tunic yet?
I'm not even familiar with what Tunic is.
Oh.
I don't mind saying it.
Tunic is a very cool. It's
Zelda-like.
very very Zelda-like. You play as a tiny little fox in an isometric world. I'm sure it's going to come to Switch eventually.
I'm in. That
Yeah.
sounds great.
It's really- it's
if
kinda
not
like-
on. I basically only play Nintendo.
Yeah,
stuff.
Yeah,
That's probably why
I think
didn't hear.
it'll be on
It'll-
Switch within the next
yeah.
year.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like Zelda 1 meets like Dark Souls a little bit in terms of combat. But it's very cute. But it's very much like Zelda 1, and like you just go.
Yep.
I love it. That sounds
Yeah.
great.
And there's
It's
a
awesome.
lot of places to explore and stuff. So
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't specifically try to not play non-Nintendo games. It's just that I just have enough time in my life to play a few games.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah.
get to enjoy the Nintendo ones. And it's just kind of
I'm
what
the
I end
same.
up going for. You know what
Plus,
I mean?
buying
Yeah.
multiple consoles can get spendy.
I have a problem now where I don't want to play it if it's not on the Switch because I play upstairs and I can sit on the couch next to my wife if she watches Netflix or whatever. Like my dog's on the couch and if we go downstairs, he's kind of a little bit unsettled. So if it's not on the Switch, I can still play it. Like I played a little bit of Bloodborne for the first time a while ago, which actually is very Twilight Princess-esque in terms of its aesthetic. But
Interesting.
yeah, if it's not on the Switch, I'm just like, I don't know, like if I want to play this.
I'm kind of getting there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it.
Well, anyway, this was an amazing chat. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for hanging out.
This was awesome. This was so much fun, man.
I've said it to you. I don't know if I said it during the recording here, but I said it earlier. Kate and I were just in a previous episode, a few episodes ago, we were joking about starting to chat with you guys and everything and just kind of feeling like we're at least part of the party now by hanging out with you. It's
Yeah.
been such a pleasure, and I really appreciate the invite so much. It's so cool.
Oh, you and your whole team have party pass anytime. This
There's
is
about
awesome.
10 of us now, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah, with
that's
all
awesome.
those blog writers and stuff. And
Yeah.
that has that whole family thing too. You know,
Yeah.
I went through a tough time in my life about a month ago, and I found that the people I reached out to were the
Yep.
AZP team.
Mhm.
Yep.
I never really imagined, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
was cool.
which is funny because I feel like I've talked to a lot of the AZP team, definitely Celeste a lot, but a lot
Celeste
of the other guys too.
Is my co-producer, and she keeps the show alive. I'm a little bit of a mad scientist. I kind of edit, and I'm a little harder to get in touch with.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for Celeste because she takes care of all the community management. She's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, we did a podcast together on someone else's show, and it was the weirdest show. And I was
really?
like,
Was it that interview one, that 1v1 maybe?
no,
She does that sometimes.
we did a show.
It was like a segment.
Oh, I see. You were both guests. on
We were
something
both
else.
guests on someone else's show, and I don't want to say it because it was a weird show. But
That's all right.
both of us were just like, that was weird. We should podcast together sometime because I like you.
When yeah, that'd be cool. When she saw a tweet about my ability to be on this stream this morning, she texted me immediately. She said, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna be able to meet Andy. He's so nice." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, cool. I don't know him yet." and you completely fulfilled her
wow.
assessment there, Andy. This has been
thank
really
you,
great.
Celeste.
And Allison, it's also been a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much
this
for
was
having
awesome.
me on.
This is
And
great.
it was really fun having you on the show too because, like we were talking about, sometimes it's hard to find things to talk about, but it's always fun when you have a new person come in and you get to
New
get their
blood.
opinions on Zelda. So yeah.
Well, if people, it almost feels silly to even have to say this, but if people are looking for the Zelda cast, how can they find the Zelda cast?
Oh,
That's Andy's spiel.
Okay, here I go. We are at the Zeldcast on Twitch, Twitter. I think that's it. I'm at Spiteri316. She's at Alasyn Eletha, and we are wherever you get your Zelda podcast.
Very nice. Excellent. Well, I think I'm going to wrap the show up here. If anybody's interested in finding more information about another Zelda podcast, this episode's coming out way after the stream. This episode's not going to come out for 3 or 4 weeks. 3 or 4 episodes. So maybe a month and a half from now. So I was about to say check out that stream, but of course that's not going to be.
Yeah, you actually can watch it if you want.
Is it recorded?
Yeah, it's recorded.
It'll be up on the Zelda Dungeon Twitch channel. So it's actually a good chance
that's
to
kinda
if you.
cool.
Yeah, you can watch some of the games that take place in the middle of the night if you want.
Yeah.
There.
Or if you're working or whatever.
Yeah.
The one that we did live today, are you going to put the audio on your XML, on your actual podcast, or is that just going to
Yes.
live as a live?
No, that's going to be
cool.
released.
It'll be its own episode.
Yeah,
Well, that'll be fun. Well, I encourage anyone from another Zelda podcast, if you haven't listened to the Zelda cast, keep out. If you want to have more of the three of us talking, they can probably keep an eye out for that episode
Yes.
pretty soon.
Yes.
That'd be a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
So we're at that episode will be out either as of this recording tomorrow or the day after. So it's going to be
Holy
available
moly.
right away.
That turnaround, dude. So go back a month and a half, listeners of another Zelda podcast, and find that episode. That's a quick turnaround.
Yep.
Cool. Excellent. Well, everything else, you can find Another Zelda Podcast on anotherzeldapodcast.com. We're on Facebook and YouTube. Just do all the searches. I feel like this is probably not a listener's first episode, so I'm kind of grazing over some of our contact us stuff. But thank you so much. I'm at Raptor Paint on Twitter. I'm not really nailing the outro here just because I'm a little bit starstruck. Andy, thank you. Allison, thank you. And Another Zelda Podcast listeners, thank you so much, guys. I'll see you next time.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us. And this was awesome. It was awesome.
Okay, bye.
Right.